Good morning, everyone. It's Tess, and today is tip 271, and I'm calling it the power of learning for obvious reasons. I flipped my phone around, or I believe I flipped my phone around, so you'll be able to see. I ran out to a local CVS yesterday, and I found this book, The Power of Learning. And what I found interesting when I glanced at it is it has a lot to do with the things that we've been learning about, like being positive, and the thoughts that we think about is what we bring to reality. And I thought, well, you know, from a scientific perspective, I'm kind of interested in, like I said, reading this book. And like I said, I just got it at the local CVS, but I've started it, and I'll share what I learn as I go through it, because I do like to support things in multiple ways because it gives me more confidence in it. And I just like to learn, and I like this kind of stuff. So kind of basically, the first chapter is what I read last night, and it talks about all we do is learn. From the minute we're born to the minute we die, all we do is learn. We learn by observation, we learn by practice, we learn by conscious studying, and by subconscious imitation. Human beings are multifaceted learning machines from our first days to our last. And I thought this was such an interesting article, and kind of wanted to use it to kind of support where, if I'm struggling with my weight loss journey or any journey in my life, how can I use this tool to help me overcome it? Or how can I get rid of the blocks that are causing me to not be able to overcome it? And it was kind of interesting. One of the first things they talked about is how that they're really the closest thing to another being in existence that may be close to us, and there aren't really many, is they talked about something called a nine-spined stickleback, and it's a fish that's 2 inches long. But what it kind of referred to is that this diminutive creature is uncanny, indeed right human-like in its ability to learn. So it was referring to the learning part of it. And it said that the fish scrutinizes the feeding behavior of its fellow sticklebacks, discerns which ones are the best foragers, and then mimics them to improve their own feeding success. And I thought this was interesting because we talk a lot in the tribe about how you want to surround yourself with people that are doing the things that you want to do in life, because we will learn and grow faster and make progress quicker if we surround ourselves with people that are succeeding at what we want to do. So even down to this article talking about the ability to learn, they refer to that as a human trait, and in this particular fish, it's how they actually survive at better rates. So I thought that was interesting, and it just goes in line with a lot of what we've been learning outside of the science area. That is that you want to surround yourself in environments that will help you to next level. And I just thought that was such an important thing to look at. It says that whether intentionally or by accident, through osmosis or otherwise, we gather up data, ideas, behaviors, and all manner of stimuli from our first day to our last. We learn consciously, we learn subconsciously, we learn because we are seeking direction. Hi, Eileen, good to see you. Good morning, good morning. So I'll just kind of share, I was at a CVS last night, and they had this book about learning. And what I found interesting about it, and it was just in the magazine section, but what I found interesting about it is it had scientific reasons that support a lot that we've been learning in the tribe, and a lot that, like, self-help people tell you that, you know, what you think is what you bring to reality. The people you surround yourself are the people that you become like the people that you surround yourself. And this was kind of even talking about the same thing, and that is that we as humans by design are generated so that we can educate and we can self-study, but that our growth comes greatly by surrounding ourselves with people, because we tend to mimic who we're around, and that what we think about is what we create in reality. And I like this because it's a scientific approach to what we've been learning in other ways. And there's some quotes, like I've highlighted throughout it. Like I said, I read the first chapter last night. But I like to support things in multiple ways because it kind of makes me more push forward. And it was talking about that learning is layering. So that goes back to these small steps. Take a little small step, add another little small step, add another little small step. sometimes we all try to jump in the middle, or I'm guilty of it, try to jump in the middle of the ocean and swim to shore 200 miles away. Well, I never succeed that way. And even this article is talking about how it has to be layering. It has to be small steps. We can collect and accumulate information like the rings from an ancient tree. As small children, we learn countless elementary skills and lessons, and we learn them so completely that today we can't remember ever not knowing them. And I thought that was interesting, because if you go back and you look at, as a child, you had to learn so many things. And this gentleman kind of talked about how, as a child, and I love this quote, he learned to read by every night he would lay in bed with his mom and they'd read books together. Now, at some point in time, he kind of naturally learned to read, and he just never understood why. But he kind of said this little phrase that was an aha for me, and maybe it will be for you too. He said, he remembers almost every detail about learning to read, except actually learning the language. And he said, but what he did learn, as most of us do, so that one day, by some strange alchemy, he could glance at a phrase, like the phrase by some strange alchemy, and recognize not only each word, each letter, and its meaning, but also the entire sequence and its context, that it was meant figuratively and was kind of rhetorical, and it had a flourish, it had a rhetorical flourish for effect. And not, hi, Thomas, good to see you. And not to suggest that his mom dabbled in medieval mysticism. But it was kind of interesting that he pointed out that as children, we couldn't read, we didn't recognize letters, we couldn't understand phrases, we didn't have comprehension, and that all those things were learned as children, and now they're just secondhand and we don't think about it. Well, that is kind of what has to happen as our journeys move forward. We have to identify what we want to change. We have to go to square one. We have to take the baby steps. We layer on the new education, and then we come to a place where it's automatic and we own it. And I think we forget about that, and that's what I loved about this article. Like I said, I found this at CVS yesterday, and it's kind of about the scientific parts of your mind. And what I found interesting when I was glancing at it last night, that's why I bought it, is that it supports all the things that we're learning through the tribe. So we want to learn, and we know that we learn, this article says, in a lot of ways we learn by mimicking, which supports what Doc V says. Get mentors, surround yourself around people who are accomplishing what you want to accomplish. And remember that even as children, we had to start back at square one. And like this article said, layer it step by step and build it and grow it out. It kind of talks about we learn to grasp meaning and appreciate nuances and recognize subtext and differentiate between seriousness and sarcasm. We learn to read a room of people as we walk in. We develop emotional intelligence and empathy. And all this unfolds in the brain like an elaborate biochemical choreograph. And it's done through neurons, synapses, and neurotransmitters. And like I said, I love the idea of the science part of it, because everything about the science part supports everything that we've been learning, like from the coaches. And it talks about like that your body can just adapt and you keep growing and you learning. And they were identifying certain people, like the blind Wisconsin pianist who performed all over the world. And he was actually a person that could listen to music and just repeat it. You know, it's almost like whatever our handicaps are, our body focuses on fixing something else to make us excel. And I used to tutor autistic or Asperger's, and really what they would always say is that when you work with them, and I'm going to agree with this, there's usually a gifted area somewhere else. They may not be easy with language because they automatically go to a different, and they actually did tests on some of the students. Well, not my students in particular, but there were tests where they would do like brain scans, and they could see that when some of us do language, our brain would automatically go over here, but then those that struggled with it, they would go, say, onto a different area. And that through, like in our case, we taught what was called multisensory sequential repetitive learning. And what would happen is the brain would kind of rewire based on this new training. So I thought this was interesting. These are theories that we all know about. And if we apply them in our own lives and remember that just like we learn to read, we can learn to love the water, love the smoothies, love the salads, and love the feeling of being healthy. If we just take that small little step, layer it like the rings of a tree, surround ourselves with people that are in the same direction as we are, we can make the changes that will be forever. And I loved this, like I said, I love this book because it's just like a magazine book that was at the CVS yesterday, but I like being able to put scientific stuff connected to all the behavioral things that we're learning from Doc V and everybody else. And Doc V hits on the science sometimes too, but I like to give myself no reason to fail. So that's what this is about. And really that just covered the very first chapter of this book. I'm sure I'll share more as I continue to read it, but I hope you have a good day. And just remember, none of us knew how to read, recognize a letter, understand a phrase when we were first born. And we had the ability to do it. So in the same sense that we are struggling with our weight loss journeys, we can learn how to succeed. We can learn how to win. We can learn how to make the changes that will make us be happy, healthy, and reaching for every experience we haven't received yet or achieved yet in the same manner that we started with as a child. So let's revisit our childhood and propel ourselves forward into the future. Thank you so much and have a beautiful day.